Okay, this is Hurricanes Part 2, and here's a picture of a hurricane. I don't recall which hurricane this is, and I wanted to um, talk a little bit about the different parts of a hurricane. And so you can see in the middle, right here, this kind of open space where it's kind of a hole in the middle of the hurricane. Well, that is called the eye of the hurricane, and it is actually very calm. You would think that the center of the hurricane would be the most devastating, but it's not. It's actually kind of an empty spot of low pressure, I would assume, and it's very calm. So people in a hurricane, and I'll show you in class sometime pictures of people in a hurricane, and they're running around playing, throwing a football around, and they think, oh, the hurricane's over. Well, little do they realize that they're in the very center of the hurricane, and actually, probably the worst is yet to come, because just outside of the eye of the hurricane, there is this area just on the outside of the eye, which they call the eye wall. And the eye wall is actually the fastest winds. The fastest winds. And will do the most wind damage. So there you are, tossing your football around, happy because you survived the hurricane, and all of a sudden, an even more devastating storm comes along to kind of spoil the party. And again, also you can see that the hurricane is spinning, rotating in this counterclockwise direction due to Coriolis effect. And the other parts of the hurricane are, you can't really see it, but these kind of streaks in between. Don't know if you can tell, but you can kind of see how it's separated, where you have some lines of openness there, and those are rain bands. Rain bands. And it's just something to point out. I'm not sure how important it is to our studies, but in class I'll show you a picture of rain bands, and really it's just kind of like separate storms or waves of storms, because you can imagine you get a huge amount of different updrafts and downdrafts, and the wind motion is just crazy inside of a hurricane. And then finally, the most devastating part of a hurricane that you will not be able to see in this drawing is called a storm surge. A storm surge. And the storm surge is basically the water that the hurricane comes or brings with it. And if you imagine yourself with a hot cup of tea or cocoa, and you're trying to cool it off by blowing on it, and you blow the wind of your breath over the top of it, and you're making waves, and maybe you make it spill over your mug. That's basically a storm surge, in in a very, very small way. So, this gives you an idea of a storm surge, and the water gets pushed by the hurricane, and as it comes closer to shore, the land kind of pushes it up, and that immense water just rises and rises and rises. So as it comes closer to shore, the water rises to, what can be unbelievable levels. And the storm surge is the thing that really creates the most damage in what hurricanes do. Okay, and then here finally we have kind of a diagram of the different parts of a hurricane, and here's, of course, the eye, which I said was calm. Here's the eye wall, which has the fastest winds. And here are these spiral rain bands. And what they're not showing you is that there's all this there's all this wind circulation and air circulation, where you get updrafts here and downdrafts here and updrafts here, and updrafts and winds that will travel across the top of it and then sink down. And I guess here's some arrows here showing how some of the updrafts are coming up here through the spiral rain bands. So, so there it is. There's a lot of information about her that I've been giving you. Some of the important things, again, the different parts are the eye is the calm part, the eye wall is the fastest winds, and the storm surge creates the most damage. And then I would also review all the facts that I gave you about the storm formation, that the greatest, the fuel for the storm is the warm, moist air, and why it occurs at the equator, and what makes the hurricane die off, and things like that. So watch this video, review it, review Hurricane Part 1. That should give you a good basis for hurricane knowledge. Alright, thanks a lot.